At a prestigious academy, a poor black teenager arrives early to complete his janitorial duties before quietly taking his seat for a high-stakes exam. Every second matters. His scholarship is his only hope. But when the student beside him suffers a sudden medical crisis, he rushes to help without hesitation. His reward? The scholarship is revoked. His last chance slips away, lost, hopeless. What he doesn't know is that his act of kindness is the key to a future far greater than anything he'd ever dared to dream. The morning light in St. Augustine Academy always arrived with a hush. Unlike the cluttered hum of public schools or the indifferent clang of city bells, this place, tucked behind iron gates with its ivy-wrapped walls and marble-floored halls, greeted dawn like a cathedral receiving mass. Solemn, polished, meticulous. The school was old, prestigious, and proud. It smelled of polished wood, old money, and the quiet expectations of excellence. The hallways echoed the footsteps of generations destined for Harvard, Yale, or Oxford, where names mattered more than needs and tradition spoke louder than hardship. That's where Malik Johnson first appeared. Not through the front doors like the others, but from the side gate by the maintenance shed. Every morning at 6:10 sharp, 30 minutes before the school even unlocked the main entrance. He walked alone, always carrying the same gray backpack, frayed at the seams but neatly kept, and wearing a uniform that, though second-hand, was pressed and clean. His shoes were worn, the soles nearly smooth, but they shone from nightly polish. He was 16, tall and lean, with skin the color of deep coffee and sharp, intelligent eyes that rarely rested. His face had the calm maturity of someone who had grown up fast, but the softness of someone who hadn't let the world harden him. His hands were rough with calluses, but his fingers moved with care, especially when wiping chalk dust from the baseboards or stacking textbooks in symmetrical towers. He was the scholarship kid, the janitor student, as some whispered. Malik had earned his way into St. Augustine through pure merit, top scores, glowing recommendations, and still, that wasn't enough. The school had let him in, yes, but only on the condition that he worked 2 hours before and after class to cover the non-tuition costs. A clever phrase for manual labor. He cleaned whiteboards, changed light bulbs, vacuumed carpets, refilled hand sanitizer dispensers. He never complained, never asked for less, and never skipped a single task. When the last hallway was clean and the sun finally broke through the stained glass of the main library corridor, Malik would quietly take his seat. Always the same one, last row, right corner, next to the window. It wasn't assigned to him, not officially, but everyone knew that seat was his. No one fought him for it, not because they respected him necessarily, but because somehow it seemed right. Even the teachers rarely asked him to move forward. From that window, Malik had the perfect view of the school's east courtyard, where the ivy grew thickest and the statue of the school's founder stood, hand raised like a silent blessing, while others fiddled with phones or whispered under breath about weekend trips to Aspen or upcoming yacht parties. Malik took notes. Carefully. Diligently. He wrote everything. Concepts from the lecture, snippets from the board, even thoughts that came to him in quiet bursts of realization. His notebook was small, bound in cracked imitation leather, the corners folded from use. Pages filled in pencil, neat and ordered. There were no doodles, no idle scribbles, just knowledge, captured like it was treasure, and maybe to him it was. The other students noticed him, of course. How could they not? Some mocked him in the way that privileged children often mock what they do not understand. "Hey, Malik," a boy in a varsity jacket once jeered, tossing a crumpled napkin on the floor. "You missed a spot." Malik bent down and picked it up without a word, dropping it into the bin with the same grace he gave to chemical formulas. But most of the students didn't jeer. In fact, many liked him, quietly, respectfully. He helped when someone forgot their charger. He pointed out textbook errors without condescension. When a girl dropped her books in the rain, he held his own jacket over them. He wasn't loud, he wasn't boastful, and he never asked for thanks, but he was always there, always doing something for someone else, as if he didn't trust the world to be kind on its own. In the teacher's lounge, his name came up often, always with a mix of admiration and caution. "That boy's brilliant," Mr. Harlan, the chemistry teacher, once said while stirring his coffee. "But he's burning both ends of the candle." "He's got more work ethic than most of the board's sons," another muttered. Yet no one changed the system for him. Not the extra duties, not the late nights, not the rules. Malik's mother worked double shifts at the downtown hospital, cleaning the ICU floor. She left at 5 and came home at 9. His little sister, Nia, only 10, was asleep by the time she got home. Malik helped her with homework, made her lunch, and kissed her forehead good night. Every Friday he slipped a note into her backpack that read, "You're the smartest person I know, never forget that." He didn't know how, but he made sure she felt it in 100 small ways. And so, each day at St. Augustine began the same. The sun rising behind Gothic stone towers, students spilling into their leather-seated classrooms, and Malik Johnson standing by the window, quiet, poised, notebook in hand, catching knowledge like sunlight, warming himself with dreams he could barely afford to say aloud. He wasn't supposed to be there, not by the world's logic, but he was, and for now, that was enough. It was Tuesday, not the kind that sneaks past quietly, but the kind that clings to your bones, cold, damp. A drizzle hung in the air like an unspoken warning, making the stone walkways of St. Augustine slick under polished shoes. Malik had arrived earlier than usual, his breath forming small clouds as he unlocked the janitor's closet near the east wing. He worked quickly, mopping the art room floors, wiping down cafeteria trays left from late-night study groups, restocking the tissue boxes in classrooms. By the time the first bell rang, he'd already finished his shift, washed his hands, straightened his tie, and was seated at the back of room 203, the exam hall, his worn notebook resting under his desk like a silent companion. Today's test wasn't just any test, it was the mid-year scholarship reevaluation. Students on full academic scholarship were required to maintain top performance, and this standardized exam was designed to objectively measure whether they were still worthy of the school's generosity. It wasn't personal. That's what the board said, just policy, numbers and merit, clean and fair. But Malik knew better. He knew this exam would decide whether he could stay or whether his seat by the window would be passed to someone with polished shoes and a family name embroidered on the alumni wall. The room was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that made pencils scratch louder, breaths feel shallow, and clock ticks sound cruel. Students sat in neat rows, heads down, brows furrowed in concentration. The test had begun 15 minutes ago, and Malik, though calm on the outside, was writing with urgency. His mind moved fast, faster than the clock, but he paced himself, knowing exactly how long each section should take if he were to finish all of them. He was halfway through the second essay question when the boy next to him, Liam Winthrop, made a sound. It wasn't loud, more like a sharp inhale mixed with a strange rattling deep in the throat. Malik glanced sideways. Liam, with his freckled cheeks and pale skin gone gray, was hunched over, his hand clutching at his chest, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Then came the second sound, like choking, and the soft thud of his forehead hitting the desk. Pens dropped, a few students gasped, but no one moved, no one dared. From the front of the room, Ms. Grigg, the school's longest-serving exam proctor, known for her perfectly knotted pearls and rigid spine, snapped her fingers toward the back. "Stay in your seats," she ordered, her voice sharp as cold steel. "Anyone who leaves their desk forfeits their examination immediately." She picked up the phone by the whiteboard, dialed fast, and barked, "This is room 203, medical emergency, get the nurse, now." But Malik saw something in Liam's eyes. Wide, panicked, unfocused, and in his skin, which was turning gray, not white or pink or flushed, but gray, the color of something going wrong fast. Malik's body moved before his brain could stop him. He stood up, slowly at first. Then, seeing no one else moving, he stepped fully into the aisle and rushed to Liam's side. "Malik Johnson," Ms. Grigg barked, "back to your seat. That's an invalidation." But he didn't hear her. Not really. He was too busy lowering Liam gently to the floor, rolling him onto his side, loosening the top button of his uniform shirt, checking his breathing, shallow, labored, and then tilting his head just right to clear the airway, doing everything he had read about in first aid manuals he'd borrowed from the library on weekends. A girl in the front row covered her mouth, eyes wide. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." For a moment the room stood still. Students frozen in their seats, watching this tall, dark-skinned boy in a thrifted uniform kneel on the floor of a school built for governors' sons, using knowledge he was never formally taught to save a classmate he barely knew. Liam's breathing began to stabilize. The flush of life returned to his cheeks. Slowly, faintly. Just as the nurse burst through the door with a wheeled kit and a stretcher, Malik stepped back, hands shaking slightly, sweat dotting his forehead, not from panic, but from the sheer concentration of keeping someone alive. He looked up at Miss Grigg, who stood frozen by the whiteboard, still holding the phone's receiver in her hand like a useless relic. She didn't speak, not at first. Then, clearing her throat, she announced in a voice that betrayed none of the moment's weight, "Malik Johnson, please return to your seat. You have 15 minutes remaining." Malik nodded. He walked back slowly, quietly, sat down at his desk, picked up his pencil. His test paper was now creased and smudged from when he had grabbed it too fast trying to get to Liam. He looked at the clock. 15 minutes, half the essay left. One multiple-choice section untouched, no chance to finish. He didn't write another word. He simply closed the exam booklet when time was called. Outside, he heard the stretcher wheels echo down the hall. Liam was going to be okay. Malik knew that. He'd seen it in the nurse's expression, but as he handed in his test with only half of it completed, Malik also knew something else. He had just lost everything he had worked for. And somehow he wasn't even sorry. The next few days passed like walking underwater. Everything moved, but nothing felt real. Malik showed up for school just as he always did, before the sun had fully stretched across the courtyard, his mop bucket rattling softly down the tiled hallway, the smell of lemon cleaner trailing behind him. He said nothing about the test. No one did, not out loud. But the glances said enough. Teachers looked at him longer, like they wanted to say something, but didn't know how. A few students clapped him quietly on the back between classes. One girl left a folded note on his desk. "You did the right thing." No signature, just that. And still, the silence from the administration office was deafening. Ms. Grigg hadn't looked him in the eye since that morning. She passed him in the hallway once, holding a clipboard tight to her chest, and her jaw clenched just a little tighter when she saw him. No apology, no explanation, just business as usual. Malik kept going. He cleaned the bathrooms, he collected the recycling, he helped a freshman find her lost phone. He studied late into the night just in case, still hoping, somehow, that someone up there would look past the half-finished exam and see what really mattered. But, on the morning of the 5th day after the test, the envelope came. It was thin. Too thin to hold anything good. Inside was a single sheet, typed in a serif font too formal to soften the blow. "Dear Mr. Johnson, we regret to inform you." His scholarship had been revoked, effective immediately, due to an incomplete evaluation score, no exceptions, no appeals. That evening Malik sat at the small kitchen table in their one-bedroom apartment. The paint on the walls was peeling in spots, and the fridge hummed too loud, but it was home. His mother, Marlene, was stirring lentils on the stove, her back hunched from 12 hours on her feet, scrubbing floors 2 neighborhoods away. Nia sat on the couch with a coloring book, feet swinging. Malik held the letter in both hands like it might collapse if he didn't grip it just right. "I have to stop going," he said finally, and the words came out flatter than he expected. His mother turned slowly, wooden spoon still in hand. "Stop going where?" "School," he said. "The scholarship's gone. They cut it. I can't afford tuition or the fees. Even if I tried to stay, they'll pull me from class." "I asked. The finance office said it's final." Marlene's eyes flickered with pain, but she didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years. Not when her husband died, not when the power went out for 2 weeks last winter, not when she pulled double shifts through the flu just to buy Nia new shoes. She simply leaned against the counter and nodded once, slowly. "I can take a night shift at the plant," Malik continued. "They said they'll hire me on the floor. I'll still study. At home. I'll figure something out." There was a silence between them, long and heavy and old. It was the kind of silence that didn't need words, because every word would have cracked open something neither of them could afford to feel. Malik still showed up to school the next morning, not as a student but to clean. His backpack didn't have books, just gloves, wipes, and a small sandwich wrapped in wax paper. He swept past his old classroom, not looking in. He mopped quietly, efficiently, eyes down, mouth shut. But the students noticed. They noticed that his seat was empty now, the one by the window. They noticed that his name was no longer on the attendance sheet. They noticed that the boy who had once saved a life was now wiping the floor, same as before, but not staying to learn when the bell rang. And something shifted. One student spoke up in class, then another. Whispers turned into hallway conversations. That night, a girl named Jasmine, student body vice president, posted a message online with the subject, "He saved someone's life, and we let him lose his future." By noon the next day, a petition had started. It spread fast. Hundreds of students signed. Some teachers quietly supported it. A few spoke up in meetings. Others didn't say anything but signed anyway. They didn't ask for much, just one thing: let him take the test again. The petition reached the dean's office, the head of the scholarship committee, even the headmaster himself. But behind closed doors there were hesitations. Rescheduling the test would require logistics. Revisiting the policy would set a precedent. Admitting fault publicly might suggest that Ms. Grigg, a 30-year veteran, had acted inhumanely. And worst of all, the story might leak. To the press, to donors. For the administration, it wasn't about the boy anymore. It was about image, protocol, control. Malik didn't know about any of this. He just knew that each night when he walked past his school books, he kept reaching out to touch them, then pulling his hand back. Not because he didn't want to learn, but because he was afraid of hope. And hope, once cracked, is the hardest thing to pick up without bleeding. It was a Thursday morning, the kind where the sky hangs low and gray, like it hasn't yet made up its mind whether to rain or just sulk all day. At St. Augustine Academy, students filtered into the courtyard as usual, coats half-zipped, earbuds in, voices low over coffee cups. Everything felt like routine, the kind that presses down on you with its weight of expected order. No one knew the day was about to break wide open. Malik had arrived an hour earlier, just like he always did, though he no longer walked through the student entrance. Now he came through the maintenance door near the east wing, carrying a broom, a rag in his back pocket, and silence where ambition used to live. He moved with the quiet efficiency of someone trying not to be seen. He avoided the classrooms, especially room 203. Across campus, the headmaster was still trying to decide how to respond to the petition. Over 400 student signatures now. Faculty had begun whispering about it in staff meetings. A few local journalists had caught wind of it through anonymous tips, though nothing had gone public yet. In the conference room, the words precedent, risk, and donor confidence had been said too many times. No one wanted to admit out loud that punishing a child for saving another made the school look heartless. But no one wanted to say Ms. Grigg was wrong either. And then, just past 8:00 a.m., everything stopped. The sound came first. 3 engines, low and smooth, unmistakably expensive. Students turned toward the main gate just in time to see 3 jet-black luxury cars pull into the school driveway, one behind the other, gliding over the cobblestone as if they belonged there. Rolls-Royce, Bentley, another Rolls. The kind of cars you only saw in magazines or parked outside international summits. Doors opened in unison. Uniformed drivers stepped out first, opening the rear doors with practiced precision. From the middle car, a tall woman in a gray tailored suit stepped onto the walkway. She had the bearing of someone used to commanding rooms, with posture that suggested she didn't wait for introductions. Her heels tapped sharply across the flagstone, flanked by 2 assistants in black coats carrying slim briefcases. The headmaster was already halfway down the steps, tie slightly askew, confusion across his face. "Good morning," he managed, extending a hand. "Can I help you?" The woman didn't shake it. She simply said, "I'm Evelyn Winthrop. My son is Liam Winthrop." And just like that, the entire courtyard shifted. Students turned, whispers started, teachers stood frozen, everyone remembered what happened to Liam. The test, the collapse, the boy who saved him. "I'm here," she continued, voice calm but iron steady, "because your school took away a scholarship from the child who saved my son's life, and I want to know why." The headmaster stammered. "Mrs. Winthrop." "Dr. Winthrop," she corrected. "Ph.D., CEO of Winthrop and Lane Technologies, and unless you'd like this conversation to happen in front of the media, who are, by the way, waiting down the street, then I suggest you take me to your office. Now." She didn't wait for permission. She walked past him, up the stairs, straight through the double doors, her assistants flanking her like chess pieces. Someone held the door. No one spoke. Malik was in the west corridor, scrubbing scuff marks from a hallway baseboard, when he heard the announcement over the intercom. "Malik Johnson, please report to the main office, immediately." His stomach dropped. He wiped his hands on his uniform pants and walked slowly toward the front, each step heavy with old fears. What now? Had someone complained? Had the board decided something worse? But when he entered the office and saw her, the woman from the car, standing tall in front of the headmaster's desk, Liam sitting beside her looking pale but alive, he froze. Dr. Winthrop turned to him. Her voice softened. "You're Malik." "Yes, ma'am," he said, barely above a whisper. She stepped forward, slowly, until she stood right in front of him. "You saved my son." Malik blinked, unsure what to say. He couldn't breathe, he said simply, "I didn't finish the test." "You shouldn't have had to choose between doing what was right and keeping your future," she replied. "That's not a choice any child should ever face." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded document. "I'm sponsoring a full scholarship. For you, for your sister, effective immediately, no test, no condition. And I've established a new fund, the Johnson Initiative, for low-income, high-achieving students here. 10 new scholarships this year, more to come." The headmaster opened his mouth, perhaps to object or posture or explain, but she held up a hand. "And I've already spoken to your board. You won't be resisting this, not if you want to keep your public standing, not if you value your benefactors." She turned back to Malik. "Your mother will also be offered a management position at my firm. She shouldn't be cleaning hallways to keep the lights on. You're not alone anymore." Malik didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat tightened as if all the air had suddenly gotten too big to swallow. He looked at Liam, who nodded once, his eyes glassy, his lips trying to shape a thank you he hadn't yet found the courage to say. And just like that the tide turned. The following week at St. Augustine Academy was unlike anything the school had ever seen. News of Dr. Winthrop's visit spread faster than any official announcement. Students whispered about it in hallways, teachers passed glances in staff meetings, and someone, no one admitted who, leaked a photo of Malik standing beside her in the office. Within hours it was on every student's phone. "This is what justice looks like. Heroes wear aprons too." The captions varied, but the message didn't. Malik Johnson had changed the story. He returned to school the next Monday, not with a mop or a cart, but with a new backpack, a fresh uniform, and the quiet tension of someone trying to understand what it meant to walk through the same doors, but no longer be invisible. The students stared. Some smiled. A few offered small nods in the hallway. No one called him Janitor anymore. His schedule had changed too. No more custodial shifts, no more early mornings with gloves and cleaning solution. Now he arrived just in time for class. But his first stop every day, without fail, was still the east hallway window, the one beside his old seat in room 203, the one where he used to stand quietly and take notes in the half-light. He still wiped the edge of the glass with his sleeve sometimes, more out of habit than necessity. Something in him couldn't quite let that part go. They gave him back his seat, of course, the last row, window side, but this time the chair didn't feel like a corner, it felt like a vantage point. On the second morning after his return, he found something small taped beneath the desk. A folded note. He opened it carefully. Some heroes save lives. Some remind the rest of us what living should look like. J. No signature, just an initial, but he knew who it was. Downstairs, in the administrative wing, the school had quietly renamed the scholarship program. The Johnson Winthrop Scholarship for Resilience and Leadership. No press release, no grand event, just a brass plaque on the wall beside the admissions office, but people noticed, and they understood. Miss Grigg was reassigned. The official reason was early retirement. No one argued. The headmaster, once stiff and reluctant, stood before the student body during Friday assembly and said something no one expected to hear. There are moments when the rules we make must bow to the people we claim to serve. We failed one of our own, but thanks to your voices and his actions, we have the chance to do better. That day, Malik walked home with his little sister, Nia, her hand gripping his as they turned down their block. She was still in her school uniform, still bouncing with the energy of a 10-year-old who'd just passed her spelling test. "They gave me a desk with my name on it," she said, beaming. "A real one, not the folding kind, and a library card." Malik smiled. "You're going to need it." "Well, because you're going to read everything in there. Twice." She laughed, skipping ahead, and Malik watched her for a moment, the corners of his mouth lifting in a way they hadn't in weeks. Behind them, their building still had peeling paint, the elevator still groaned, but inside, something had shifted. That night he sat at his desk, the one Dr. Winthrop's team had delivered, cherry wood, smooth edges, a single drawer that didn't stick, and pulled out his old notebook. The pages were worn, the spine barely holding, but he couldn't bring himself to replace it. He turned to the back, to a page he'd kept blank for months. And finally he wrote, "I didn't finish the test, but I did what mattered." Word of the story reached further than the school. Local news picked it up, then regional, then national. "Teen gives up scholarship to save classmate," read one headline. "From mop to medal, the boy who changed his school," read another. But Malik didn't care for the titles. He didn't need recognition. What mattered to him was simpler. Quiet. Every morning someone was still sitting in that last row seat by the window, and for the first time, every student who walked past it understood what that meant. It meant someone had once chosen kindness over consequence. It meant someone had stood up not for attention, but because it was right. And it meant that no act of good, no matter how small, ever went unseen forever. As the seasons changed and the courtyard trees dropped golden leaves onto the walkways, the window remained clear, clean, a little worn around the edges. Just like the boy who once stood there, notebook in hand, and who, no matter what the test said, never really failed at all. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.